Tennessee football is a top 10 preseason team entering next football season. By who? All that and more each Friday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it. This is Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Cain. So happy to have you guys here along for the ride and making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day. Every dayers literally couldn't do it without you. 15,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Got a push and an assist from Tyler and Will. At 99.1 The Sports Animal yesterday, so I appreciate those guys. It's the offseason, man. Growing the show is obviously that is a task that I take very seriously in the offseason, but sometimes it's slow moving. Been trying to get past 15 on YouTube for a couple weeks now, so appreciate you guys for making that happen and for being a part of the show. Got a fun show coming up. Grant Ramey is going to spend about 15 minutes with me. We're going to talk Tennessee basketball. Looking ahead to the March Madness tournament, to the SEC tournament. Obviously, Tennessee, Alabama coming up this weekend. Get his thoughts. That's Grant Ramey coming up. And, of course, we'll talk a little football towards the end and get into some of these favorite football movies of mine. That's coming up here in segments 2 and 3. But first, ESPN. So I lied a little bit in the cold open. It's not a true preseason ranking, but it is a ranking. So I'm going to lead with it, right? ESPN's Bill Connelly. Talked about him a couple days ago with 1/3 of the SP Plus rankings returning production. He has released his full preseason SP Plus rankings ahead of the 2025 season, and your Tennessee Volunteers come in ranked number 8. Number 8 with an SP Plus rating of 21.3. Okay, I'll get into kind of what that means here in a moment. The 22nd ranked offense and the 4th ranked defense, according to the SP Plus rankings. And what is, again, the SP Plus rankings? Let's remind everybody. Number 1, returning productions. What we talked about on the show a couple of days ago, right? How many of your yards, your points, your carries, your catches, your throws, your attempts, how much are those returning to your roster? That is a massive chunk of what the SP Plus rankings are. And again, we spent a show on it a couple of days ago and how Tennessee, 49% of the offense returns, but 58 or 62 or whatever it was percent of the defense returns. We talked about it on Wednesday's show. But this is a little more than 60% of what the SP Plus rankings are. So returning production. 2, recent recruiting. Piece informs the caliber of teams' potential replacements and or new starters in the lineup. It is determined by both the past few years of recruiting rankings and the quality of incoming transfers, as it accounts for about 14% of the projection. So the smallest piece of the pie, but still a decent piece, right, is recruiting, how you've done in the past couple cycles and what you've done in the transfer portal. And a third little sliver of the pie, this is a little bit bigger of a sliver, a little more than 20% is recent history. You're going to take into account Tennessee, right? Coming off a 10-win regular season, coming off an 8-win regular season, coming off a 10-win regular season, coming off a 7-win regular season. I mean, that's Josh Heupel's tenure working in reverse order. So there's been some success there. I remember doing this show following, after the 2022 season, and when the SP Plus rankings came out and all that, and I think Tennessee might have been down a little bit, but this one sentence really kind of resonated with me, and I think it holds true now a couple of years later. Quote, "It stands to reason that a team that has played well for 1 year is likely to duplicate that effort than a team that has been good for years on end, and vice versa," right? Is less likely. I left out a key component. It stands to reason that the team that has played well for 1 year is less likely to duplicate that effort than a team that has been good for years on end, and vice versa, right? This factor accounts for a little more than 20%. So coming off that 2022 season where Tennessee had a 10-win regular season, it's like, that's great, but we need to see some more consistency, right? You followed it up with an 8-win season. You follow that up with a 10-win season, okay? So you've got 2 10-win regular seasons in the past 4 years. That's a foundation to stand on. So Tennessee's going to get some bumped in that as well. So a little more than 60% of returning production, about 14% of recent recruiting, and a little more than 20% of recent history, and that is how you accumulate an SP Plus ranking. Tennessee comes in here at number 8, according to ESPN's Bill Connelly. Number 1 is Ohio State. Number 2 is Alabama. So recent success, okay. Recent recruiting, okay. Returning production, well, you're returning Ryan Williams. That's a star that I know of. You're returning a lot more other players, but you are losing your quarterback. Alabama at number 2 is a little confusing, but I'd have to dive down way deep into the numbers, into their depth chart to figure that out. But Alabama at number 2, Penn State at number 3, Georgia at 4, Notre Dame at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, Tennessee at 8. All those teams in front of Tennessee, there's not been one, wow, what one of those teams. I haven't seen any upset, if you will. LSU or Ole Miss is behind Tennessee at 9, LSU's at 10, Clemson's at 11, A&M's at 12. Then you get to Michigan, Miami, Missouri, South Carolina, Florida, SMU, Kansas State, and Oklahoma rounds out the top 20. So Tennessee at number 8. That's not bad when you take a look at how this is kind of brought up in terms of the percentages. So ESPN's Bill Connelly goes ahead and he breaks these things up into kind of subsections here. And he does a section called Sell, Sell, Sell. Last year's Big 12 close game winners: Arizona State, Iowa State, Texas Tech. It says ASU, ISU, and Tech are all among the huge batch of potential Big 12 contenders, but they were a combined 17-4 in one-score finishes last season, 12-3 in conference play. They're 14th, 11th, and also considered in Schlaball's list of way too early top 25 teams. But SP Plus is far lower on all of them, 29th, 28th, and 33rd. So the close but no cigar from the Big 12, the Arizona States, the Iowa States, and the Texas Techs. He also says sell, sell, sell on last year's Big 10 upstarts, Illinois and Indiana. Ooh, Indiana, how about this? After going 11-2 and securing a well-earned spot in the college football playoff, Indiana landed 17th on Schlaball's list. Mark Schlaball, ESPN columnist for this way too early top 25. Illinois, meanwhile, went 10-3 and ranks 3rd in returning production. They're 13th according to Schlaball, but SP Plus ranks these teams 24th and 25th. The Hoosiers are lower because they're just outside the top 40 in returning production and have no strong recent history to lean on. I'm not going to read all that, but nonetheless, he's saying sell Illinois and Indiana. Indiana could be a one-off. He's also saying sell the state of South Carolina. This is interesting. Clemson and South Carolina. Man, that's interesting. He says Schlaball ranks the Tigers, Clemson 7th, and the Gamecocks 10th. While SP Plus isn't particularly low on either team, it still ranks them 4 and 6 spots lower, respectively. This season will be a good measure of each team's ceiling, especially Clemson's, considering the Tigers rank first nationally in returning production, and this is a sidebar for me, have a really, really good quarterback. They haven't looked like a genuine national title contender since 2019 or 2020, can experience pushback, can experience pushing them back to the top tier of the sport. We'll see. And then they have Texas in here. Interesting because, again, they lost Quinn Ewers and a bunch of other players. So I'm not sure Texas is going to be in there. His subsection is buy. These are teams that you want to buy. One that reflects fondly on Tennessee. The SEC's upper middle class: Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas A&M. Interesting. When Schlaball is putting together the way too early, he takes into account both assumed quality and potential wins and losses. SP Plus only cares about the former. As mentioned above, the SEC remains the sport's deepest conference and best recruiting conference, which obviously plays a role into these projections, even if the Big Ten has as many or more top-tier contenders. All but 5 of the teams mentioned here rank more than 10 spots higher in the SP Plus than they do in Schlaball's list, but they'll also probably lose lots of games. That's how conferences depth works. OU is projected 20th, but his average projection win total is just 6.3 thanks to a ridiculous schedule. Among these five teams should come a couple of college football playoff contenders and a couple of disappointments. But from a power rankings perspective, they all have top 20 potential. Again, that's Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, and Texas A&M. So Tennessee's in a group that Bill Connelly says buy, meaning buy stock in. I'm not sure I agree with all the ones that he has in the sell category like Texas, but certainly Indiana's in there, so I think it makes sense. But the big picture here, Tennessee is a top 10 team in the country, according to ESPN's Bill Connelly, coming in at number 8 in the SP Plus rankings. And again, SP Plus takes into account returning production, recent recruiting, and recent history. So, as I love to say, pocket protectors and glasses on the bridge of your nose here, that's kind of what these are. But still, it's something worth noting when you look at some other teams around the country. Recent success, returning production, how you've done in the portal, and how you've done in recruiting classes. Tennessee's measured up pretty well in all of those here lately. And that's why Tennessee is a top 10 team, and of course, coming off a college football playoff appearance. Hey, when we come back, what does Grant Ramey have to say about Tennessee's monster showdown this weekend against Alabama at home? More on that with Grant Ramey of VolQuest.com when we continue here on a Friday Locked On Vols. Life moves at you fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exams required. You get a peace of mind where you want to make sure as a parent that your family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric can give you that peace of mind. It's affordable coverage as well. Get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes. That's at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Today, policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions. Again, that is Fabric, a proud sponsor here of Locked On Vols. Grant Ramey, what a big basketball game coming up for Tennessee at the Food City Center on Saturday. I'm going to lead off with it here. Is it as simple as this? If Tennessee beats Alabama, or if Alabama beats Tennessee, does the winner of that game get a number 1 seed?
It's probably not that simple. That's Tennessee's most direct path to a number 1 seed is beating Alabama. I think you could afford to maybe lose at Ole Miss next Wednesday if you beat Alabama at home. On Saturday, if you make some noise in the SEC tournament, if you have a pulse in the SEC tournament, I guess. But Alabama's your biggest competition, and Alabama's got one of those number 1 seeds right now. I think they're Lenardi's number 3 overall seed at the moment. Houston's got the 4th number 1 seed, and there's Auburn and Duke ahead of those two. So you're not catching Auburn. They're going to be the number 1 overall seed. You're not catching Duke. They're playing too well. They're beating everybody. They play in the ACC. They're not very good. Houston's probably not going anywhere. But you look at Alabama. You got Alabama coming to your place, and then Alabama goes home to play Florida, and then Alabama goes to Auburn to close the regular season. Like, that is a brutal. I mean, that is 3 teams literally in the top 5 in the AP top 25 that you're closing the regular season schedule with. So you would imagine it's going to be hard for Alabama to go 3-0, and you better do your part to not let them go 3-0 and take care of home court and all that stuff, because it feels like a 1 seed's in the balance, but I don't think it boils down to as simply as win this game and it's done.
Let's play hypotheticals here. Say Tennessee loses this game, wins the remaining 2 games after that, and then Alabama drops a game somewhere else. Outside of it being to Florida, Tennessee still could get a number 1 seed. I mean, obviously you don't want to lose this game. You're playing at home. What an opportunity! But even if you lose, I mean, there's technically still a path to being a 1 seed.
I think there is. I think that head-to-head and it being this late in the season would hurt you if Alabama is decent down the stretch, given its schedule. Like, there's not going to be a bad loss left for Alabama because the SEC tournament is going to be that tough. So I think if Tennessee lost Alabama Saturday, went 2-0 next week, and then maybe got to Saturday or Sunday in the SEC tournament, picked up some more quad 1 wins in Nashville, maybe if stuff falls your way, it could still happen. I think the door would still be open because it feels like those 3rd and 4th number 1 seeds are kind of still up for grabs a little bit. It just feels like the first 2 are kind of locked down. and everybody's just seeing what else happens with the other two.
Again, a 1 seed is not everything, but Tennessee's never had a 1 seed before in program history, and it just looks good. Not gonna lie to you. I mean, I remember, I guess it was Pearl's first year. I mean, way back when I was younger, and I was just a kid, and I was watching games and watching Sports Center and all that, and I remember Tennessee got that 2 seed that year, number 1, I believe. And it wasn't the News Sentinel, but it was some type of, maybe it was a News Sentinel, I don't know, but it was some type of newspaper cartoon, and it was these, big guys sitting at the table, Duke, Carolina, whoever it was, and then little old Tennessee over there that said, hey, who's the new guy? And it just, I mean, that was a 2 seed at the time, and Tennessee's done that since, but it just looks good. Say Tennessee is a two seed, and they're put somewhere with the 1 seed. Which 1 seed does Tennessee match up with the best?
Well, you don't want to. Well, I don't know. Auburn is just so good. Auburn is tough, man. I'm well aware of what Tennessee did at Auburn a few weeks ago and how well they. I mean, they should have won that game. They're up 5-4, whatever it was, with 2 or 3 minutes left. Like, you're in position to win that game if you could just close it out. Duke, I'm always kind of skeptical about, because I don't think we've seen great stuff from Shire in the tournament at this point. I mean, Tennessee beat them in 2020. What year was that? 3 without Zakai Ziegler to go to the Sweet 16. They got to the Elite 8 last year. They lost to North Carolina State. Obviously, that was a cool story with NC State going from an 11 seed and all that stuff to the Final Four. But that's a game you need to win based on talent. But at the same time, they're hammering people right now. They went to Miami, beat a bad Miami team by 30-something. They went to Madison Square Garden, beat a bad Illinois team by 40-something, I think. Like, they're hammering people right now. So I don't know if it's maybe Alabama. I don't know, maybe if it's Houston. Houston would be, everybody thinks Houston is kind of a similar version of Tennessee in terms of physicality and wanting to play defense. But you look at Houston's numbers offensively, that's a big deal. But I think when you try to go down and figure out what's a good matchup, there's not any. That's why you want to be a 1 seed yourself. Like, I used to be in that same boat too, where I was like, 2 seed and 1 seed. Like, what's the big difference between the 4th number 1 seed or the 1st number 2 seed? And I think you saw it kind of play out last year, where Tennessee could have been in that conversation for that 1 seed continually on Selection Sunday had they done something in the SEC tournament. They didn't. They lost to Mississippi State. They looked awful in that quarterfinal game, and North Carolina got that last 1 seed. And the difference for Tennessee is you get to the Elite 8, and Zach Edey and Purdue are waiting on you. Like, that's the 1 seed you don't want to face. Like, you don't want to face an Auburn. You don't want to face a Duke. You don't want to face a Houston. Like, if you can avoid it and be a number 1 seed, be a number 1 seed.
Yeah, but eventually you'll have to play that team anyway, right? I mean,
for sure. But
so,
it's if you get to that point, you're doing really well.
Yeah, no doubt. What you can't take away from John Shire, though, 2010 national championship over Butler. Okay, so little white shooting guard, little short guy, and then they moved into point guard, and then somehow Tennessee won, or Duke won that national championship all the way back in the day. You look at Tennessee as a whole, and kind of going into this game against Alabama. We know about the star power from Alabama. We know about Nate Oates and all that. What are some simple keys that Tennessee needs to follow in order to win this game? Obviously, I'm going to take one for you. I don't know if this is one for you. It's one for me. Obviously, don't dig yourself in a first-half hole like Tennessee loves to do.
That's a big one. I think that's the most obvious one, because you're still thinking about that 16-point hole you got in against Vanderbilt and how sluggish they looked in the first half at home in front of a big crowd. They didn't play well against Missouri a couple weeks ago at home, got down 9-11, maybe something like that early in the second half. You can't do that against an Alabama team that plays at the pace Alabama plays at, that shoots it the way Alabama shoots it, that scores it the way they've always scored it under Nate Oates. I think it's simple. It's as simple as which team forces the other team to play their style of basketball more. Like, Alabama's going to get up and down the floor, and they're going to have a bunch of possessions and a bunch of shots, and they're probably going to score points. They also don't defend very well at all. It's tough to, I don't know what the number is, like 79 or something. Like, they've given up at least 80 in just about every single road game. So, like, you're going to score points on Alabama, but if you're Tennessee, that means, you got to hit shots, but you don't want to completely play their game. So it's going to be how much can you slow them down defensively, and then how much can you kind of play that same offensive game where you're putting up points, and they're not known for their defense. You're going to have to score it. See how much you can slow them down, turn them over, force them to miss shots too.
In years past, I've not been a big believer when it comes to basketball in the SEC tournament. I mean, I've said it several times. I mean, it can hurt you. I don't think it can help you that much unless you're getting an automatic qualification. But could this year be different, Grant? Because this year the SEC is, I mean, it's always good, but this year the SEC is just so good. Like, if you make a run say you don't win at all, but say you make a run to Sunday. I mean, could the committee, actually watch the game on Sunday and value that more? I just think this year could be different because the SEC is just so challenging.
Yeah, I think it would take some special circumstances to get it to Sunday where they're still evaluating. It always just feels like the brackets put to bed Saturday night and that's it. Like whatever happens on Sunday, it's not going to make that much of a difference because most of the seedings are already set. For Tennessee specifically, I think it means something if that number 1 seed is still in the balance and still could be earned in Nashville at that point in the season. Otherwise, I've always thought it felt like it meant a little bit something more for Tennessee before they won it in 22 and snapped that streak that they hadn't won it since 79, and that was a big deal. But at the same time, like 2022, Tennessee had won like 15 out of 17 or something going into the tournament. They just won the SEC tournament. It felt like they were playing their best basketball at the right time of year. They got bounced in the second round by an 11 seed Michigan and Hunter Dickinson in Indianapolis. And then you go 2023, Zakai tears his ACL, the second to last game of the season. You think they're left for dead. They're not going to play that well. They go to the Sweet 16. They go through Duke to get there. When everybody's picking Duke to win that game, a lot of people were picking Louisiana to beat Tennessee in the first round of that tournament. And then last year, they get beat on Senior Day by Kentucky. Kentucky shoots the lights out in Knoxville and beats Tennessee. Tennessee goes to Nashville, plays awful against Mississippi State, probably the worst game they played all year. And you're trying to figure out what's this team going to do in the tournament. They couldn't score that game. It's like, oh no, here we go again. It's the same old stuff that always happens. And then they go to the Elite Eight, and they go through the path that they had to go through Texas, Creighton. Like they didn't, the bracket didn't open up for them. They earned that Elite Eight bid, and they had a tie game with Purdue with 5 minutes left, whatever it was. So you just never know with this tournament. Like you could feel great about your team, and they're gone in an instant. You could feel awful about your team, and they're there. Alabama had lost like 6 out of 7 or some crazy number going into the NCAA tournament, and everybody just kind of wrote them off. They went to the Final Four. They went through North Carolina, the number 1 seed in the Sweet 16 to do it. So you just never know this time of year, man.
March basketball is here. There's no better way to get in on all that action than over at Prize Picks, the best place for your daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, it's easy, and it keeps every single game exciting. So much fun whenever you check out Prize Picks. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points and Anthony Davis for more than 12 rebounds. I love it to where I can make my picks in less than 60 seconds, and I can stay engaged all game long. When I win, my money hits my account in as little as 15 minutes, so no waiting around. Plus, Prize Picks even offers weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even more value. How about that? Download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 in lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 in lineup. Prize Picks, it's where you can run your game. I just think it's wild. I mean, again, I'm just like everybody else. I just kind of go through it, and you see Auburn. They're so good, and they're so talented, and Auburn went to a Final Four a couple years ago. But it slapped me in the face earlier this year whenever somebody pointed out to me under Bruce Pearl, which he's been incredible at Auburn, but under Bruce Pearl, they've been past the first weekend one time, and it was when they went to the Final Four.
But it was a Final Four run.
Just incredible. Again, that's why basketball is such just a crapshoot, right? That's why everybody loves it. Like, you can be so dominant in the regular season, and then, you get bounced free, get the Sweet 16, or you can lose one of your best players in Zakai Ziegler, make a Sweet 16 run. It makes no sense, and that's why we love it so much, right?
I mean, it was the Alabama team a couple of years ago, the Brandon Miller team that was ranked number 1 that Tennessee beat in Knoxville. Everybody kind of had them as a lock. I think they were the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, and they go out in the second round to San Diego State, while San Diego State's on their way to a Final Four and a championship game, I guess, appearance for San Diego State that year, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Auburn, I was thinking about that a couple of days ago. If I'm an Auburn fan, you got to feel great about where your team's at. It feels like they're beating everybody by 25 points. They beat Ole Miss by 25 or 30 or whatever it was the other night. But at the same time, you're coming off a loss to Yale in the first round of the tournament. That's got to scare you. It's a completely different team. I understand that. And they've been great from start to finish. But, man, this time of year, you just never know. 40 minutes of basketball can be all over.
I do want to ask you one other thing before I let you go. Let's shift gears here to Indianapolis. You see, and I know you write these over at the site VolQuest all the time. and I use them on this podcast. James Pierce, kind of all over the place, right? Mel Kiper Jr., not a fan. In his defense, I've read all the stuff that he's put out. He just doesn't know. He doesn't have a feel for James Pierce.
Right.
Doesn't have in his first round. You're seeing James Pierce as high as 19 some places. Of course, it was Pro Football Focus over the summer that really kind of led that hype train. What do you make of James Pierce's kind of all over the map, and what does he need to prove? I know he's already been in action to Indianapolis this week. I mean, like, it feels like he needs to talk an awful lot, and I feel like his representation's been kind of moving him around, allowing him to talk to everybody. I think that's a good move because, Darnell Wright didn't talk here. Darnell Wright was number 10 overall. James Pierce didn't talk here either. I mean, it doesn't mean they're a bad kid. They just some missed opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I saw a picture of him behind a microphone doing the whole, I guess, this media session at the Combine, thinking, man, he didn't get a bunch of those at Tennessee. It's not used to seeing him behind a microphone. I think he has to crush it on the field. I think he's got to just be an athletic freak that he is. I think he's got to improve his stock as much as he can on the field, because it feels like everybody's talking about what he is off the field, or what, the interview stuff, I guess. I don't know. I think he's got to crush it physically, athletically, be a freak, and do well in the interviews with the team. Like, forget what the media is talking about, what's said in the press. If he can show off on the field, and then he can do good in the meeting rooms with these teams, I think that, you got to get somebody that's going to protect the passer. You got to get somebody that's going to rush the passer. He's a kid that we've seen over the last 2 years. He can rush the passer at an elite level, and maybe if he falls into the draft, maybe he falls into a great situation, ends up working out for him.
Yeah, a lot of the guys that fall end up being in great situations,
Right,
and it
right.
pays dividends throughout their career. I keep saying last one, but I do want to hit you with this one. Gene Hackman, passed away earlier this week. Great Coach McGinty and the Replacements. That's my favorite football movie. What is your favorite football movie?
He's not Coach. What did you say his name was?
McGinty.
He's Coach Norman Dale. He's a basketball coach from Hoosiers. That's Gene Hackman. Favorite movie, Rudy. Football movie, Rudy. One of the funnest rewatches is Draft Day because it's so ridiculous. But the first weekend, or the week of the draft, that Thursday morning, the first round's going to be that night. You got to find some time to watch Draft Day because it's so hilarious. It's so out of this world, but it's so funny.
But, I mean, you get some of the best quotes from the Replacements. I don't know, like, I started this thread over there, obviously, on the General's Quarters, and the Replacements not getting a whole lot of love, but it's just like, 90s replacement players. I mean, some of these quotes, pain heals, chick dick scars, glory lasts forever. I mean, that's legendary, right? But Brian's song, Friday Night Lights, of course. I think the show is significantly better than the movie.
Oh, okay, man. See, I might have to end this interview just based on that comment.
What?
I tried to get into it. I couldn't. I think I was too old. It was just too high schoolish for me, and I was feeling like 1,000 years old trying to watch that. I read the book in high school. I loved the movie. But Rudy's still number one for me. I watched Rudy when I was a kid. It makes Notre Dame seem like the coolest place ever. All that stuff, all the lore and pageantry and all that stuff, just really cool. And the Replacements, what's crazy? It's not that far-fetched because there have been replacement players in the NFL.
Yeah.
There have been holdouts and all that stuff and strikes, and what a time to be alive that must have been.
You can't count out a Shane Falco, all right? Need heart, Shane Falco. One we can agree on, and it's sorry if it's too high schoolish for you, bud, but, I mean, come on, Varsity Blues.
Oh, yeah, Varsity Blues. That's 1,000 times over. A great rewatch. Takes you back to a moment in time for sure.
All right, Grant Ramey, VolQuest.com. Appreciate it, man, and we'll be following your work Saturday, Tennessee and Alabama.
Thanks, Eric.
All right. Always a pleasure to catch up with Grant Ramey here on Locked On Vols. Does a fantastic job covering the University of Tennessee basketball, ins and outs, and of course all that and more over at VolQuest.com. And we got the dream team over there at VolQuest. Not gonna lie, between Brent and Austin, Matt, Ray, Grant, Rob, it's a really, really good place. So if you dabble a little bit, but you want to know more, no better place than over at VolQuest.com. Grant Ramey is over there as well. So big weekend coming up. Tennessee basketball is coming up. Alabama, biggest game of the season. No pun intended. I mean, this is huge. I think if Tennessee wins this game, certainly on the fast track to having a number one overall seed. And Grant and I kind of differed a little bit in that interview. I certainly don't think it's the end of the world because sure, you don't want to run into a Purdue, but then again, I mean, it'd be inverted, right? I mean, Purdue would have been the 2 seed, Tennessee would have been the 1 seed. I mean, eventually you're going to have to win those games. But I mean, obviously, having a number one seed would go a long way and would just continue to make this program look even better. So, big weekend coming up on the hardwood. Massive weekend coming up for Tennessee baseball, going to the Astros Foundation College Classic in Houston. If you can see it, if you're watching YouTube right now, I've just set there. That thing I'm pointing at right there, that board, it's got Major League Baseball stadiums on there, and you scratch them off, and then I've been starting to put pins down there. I just leaned it up right there. I mean, as you guys know, this is a new room. We moved a couple months ago, and so I haven't found a place for it yet. But anyway, long story short, I have gone to 17 active ballparks, 19 total, I think. And so this is going to be a new one for me. And so I'm really excited about going down to Houston, going to whatever it's called now, but it'll always be Minute Maid Park to me. I watched a lot of National League ball games, playoff games, an 18-inninger one time between the Braves and the Astros back when the Astros were in the National League before beating on the trash cans and all that. So anyway, I'm excited to see that ballpark. Tennessee, what an opportunity for the Vols. Oklahoma State later today. That game's going to be at 4:05 Eastern time. Probably going to be its toughest challenge of the weekend. Preseason Big 12 favorites, that being the Cowboys. They hosted a regional a season ago. Probably the best overall lineup in all the Big 12. So a really big opportunity for Tennessee baseball today. Tomorrow, Rice. Rice is very down this year. Tennessee should not have an issue with Rice. That would be, quote-unquote, the easier of the matchups this weekend. And then you're ending the weekend in Houston playing Arizona, who's got a 4-year active regional streak. It's a team that's really talented. I mean, Tennessee played them a couple years ago. They were preseason ranked top 25 entering the season. They won a whole lot of games. Got a couple All-Americans returning. So this is a really good weekend, a time where Tennessee is going to face some adversity. And I'm excited to see how Tennessee can fight through and fight, past that adversity for Tennessee baseball here in the early season. 8-0 so far, 5 wins via the run rule. It's not going to happen this weekend, in my opinion. But I'm going to be down there. I'm going to be checking it out. And if you're a baseball fan, follow my work on Twitter at _Cainer. And, of course, over at volquest.com, I'll have you covered from the Astros Foundation College Classic. Tennessee baseball, number 1, according to USA Today Coaches Poll. Number 3, D1 baseball, getting after it. And hopefully we'll get to see A.J. Russell this weekend and get to see Liam Doyle go to work against somebody with a pulse and see how much improved Liam Doyle really is. And he's been a stud so far this year. Can't wait to see it. Fun week of shows. We'll have a Monday show. I'll record it from Houston. I'll be back next week, and we'll get after it. A lot going on right now. Indianapolis, how did the Volunteers do at the NFL Combine? How did Tennessee do against Alabama in a humongous basketball game? And what's the latest with Ricky Gibson and Tennessee football? All that and more is coming up next week right here on Locked On Vols. Stay safe. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Tell your friends about it. This is Locked On Vols.